It's time for Rosé All Day and Julie's a Mess, where we talk about current events and living in an intersex life. And now, here's Julie.
Hi, everybody. Hi, welcome to justjuleigh.com and my Tuesday Night Live. Gosh, so much has happened, it feels like, in the last week or two. We already have some comments going on in the comment thread and comment section. What we are doing now, instead of Rosé All Day, which we're still kind of under the headline of Rosé All Day, each week I am coming in and I am just kind of talking about my thoughts for the week. We will be answering some questions. We have a new kind of direction for justjuleigh.com here at justjuleigh.com. Somebody the other day was like, who's we? And I went, the Just Julie brand and the team that works with me. We have a new direction, my support system, if you will. We are answering questions. You can go to justjuleigh.com and under the tab of Ask Julie, you can pretty much ask me anything that you maybe need help with, anything that you need advice on, generalized questions about being intersex, about me personally, or just things that you want to know about in general. You can now ask at that location and we will answer those and kind of partner them into our weekly discussions each week. I wanted to go ahead and say hello to Jennifer Dunham and to Stephen Coleman and to Dylan and to Brooklyn Miss. Hi, all of y'all that are joining us so far. And I really, last week, I can't even remember what we talked about in the February Live. We were going to share the story of Aspen Dental and kind of talk about that a little bit, and I didn't get to it. In thinking about what I wanted to talk about this week, and even in just going through some content on TikTok and some other platforms, I think we're going to talk about hate this week. I think we're going to just give out some generalized, we're just going to talk about hate, how I feel about some of the things that are going on in the country and the world, and even in what people just say to each other and how people kind of react to each other. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. First things first, for those of you that are my little cocktails that are on TikTok and have started to filter over to justjuleigh.com, if you have heard, we have some new merchandise. We've always had merchandise on justjuleigh.com back to the hidden candy aspect of Just Julie. You can find hoodies and things that support the I Love Hidden Candy aspect of Just Julie. We even have a wine tumbler on the Just Julie end, which says XX Wine on it, which supports me being XXY. Also has the Rosé All Day logo on it, and then justjulie.com on the back. So these are available for $35 on justjulie.com. Now, a new wine tumbler company called Wicked Tumblers is partnering with me on TikTok to create little cocktails, tumblers. And these little cocktail tumblers will look like this. They say little cocktail on the front. We are going to be putting a link up in the next couple of weeks on TikTok so you can get your little cocktail wine tumblers. The little cocktail ones are done in a pink and purple and gray swirl with silver lettering. It says little cocktails with a martini glass on the front. On the back, it says Love Just Julie. They look just like this, and they will be $25 through the Wicked Tumbler link, which I will be putting up. They are insulated. They're cute. You can put anything that you would like to in it, from milk to gin to just whatever you want to drink, coffee. And they are washing machine safe. We've also had some requests for different sayings that I say on TikTok. So we are currently working on a seafoam green tumbler that will say little cocktails on the front, hashtag adult fun time. So we're going to be getting all of these great merchandise opportunities out there to support myself and my advocacy and justjulie.com. So if you're a little cocktail and you're joining us tonight on our YouTube platform, thank you. If you have not switched over yet, please do so. We are trying to have mass world domination on all social media platforms. This is a live interactive chat, so obviously comments can appear in the YouTube thread just like they do on the TikTok thread, and we'll be answering those questions as well. Hi, Benjamin Ramos. Welcome. Stephen said, I'm stunning. Thank you so much. Flattery will get you everywhere in this camp. Everywhere. It'll give you access to everything. Everything. Okay. So let's kind of talk about it. So a lot of people do not understand my disdain with Aspen Dental. So we'll start off kind of with that. A couple of weeks ago, I went in to get my dentures refitted and relined at a local Aspen Dental here in Savannah, Georgia. And not to keep rehashing what went on, but people don't know what went on. And this kind of leads into what we're talking about tonight. So I went in just to get a simple reline on my existing dentures. And the gentleman that was doing the reline, the lab technician, he kind of started the day off. When I first met him that morning, he was complaining about another location that he worked at. And he said he hated working in the Savannah location, the location we were in. He was saying this to another staff member. He said, I hate working in this location because you either get the really poor people coming into this location or you get the really rich people coming into this location, and they all have issues. And he goes, I like the other location I work in because they are so kind of outside the scope of where they need to be that they are just happy to get teeth. And I thought, well, that's kind of a shitty thing to say. That's kind of shitty to say. And it also kind of made me worry that I was about to leave my dentures with him. But I left them because I didn't have any other directive and I needed to get them fixed. And so when I went back in later on in the afternoon, he had reshaped my dentures. They didn't fit at all. He had destroyed those dentures. And then when the other staff member went back in to say she is not happy with the work that was done, his remarks, which could be heard from where I was, they actually could be heard throughout the dental office. The lab technician, his name was Kevin, says, well, it's probably not happy that it makes its jawline look a little more masculine, which is how it would have looked before it transitioned. Think about that. Think about that. Think about what he said. One, he was upset that I was calling him out for his shoddy work. Two, he was assuming that I was transgender. Now, we've said this on TikTok. There are a lot of amazing transgender individuals in this world, but he defamed that whole community. He also defamed the intersex community because I'm not trans. And he made wide assumptions. He broke every HIPAA law in the book. He was talking about a patient that was in the office to have work done that had nothing to do with gender at all. His comments were heard by another staff member and then throughout the building for anybody else that was in that office. Then she came in to get me to try on the adjustments that he had just made. And I said, one, I'm not trans. And that's a conversation that you shouldn't be having anywhere about anybody. Two, at that point, I then had to share that I was intersex, and knowing that they were not going to know what that meant, I then had to share my story. Now, normally I love sharing my story, but sometimes you don't want to share it. And I certainly did not want to share it just to make myself feel visible and viable in that moment. She goes back in, and the conversation goes from being very audible to being very silenced and quiet. Yeah, seriously, Brooklyn. Seriously, Maribel. So it goes from being very loud to being very quiet. She comes back in. He follows her back into the room, right? And then he's like, oh, I heard you're an actress. Well, first he said, it gave you an overbite, but overbites are natural. And I was like, if overbites are a natural part of dentistry, why do so many parents pay to get their kids into braces so they won't have an overbite as an adult? So one, that's not true. Two, well, I'm not trans. And then he was like, well, I hear you're an actress in Savannah. What kind of acting do you do? Now, my smart ass reaction was, the kind of projects that require actors and actresses. But I felt like that would somehow be lost on him. So while the other staff member is in there, and let's be honest, when I am frustrated and scared, normally when I'm scared. So when I go into a fear reaction for myself, when I'm fearful, I resort to comedy. That's how I've always been. That's how I deal with stuff. So as soon as he said, what kind of film are you in? I said porn, because I needed to lighten the situation up for myself. Now, I then said, ha, 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 just kidding. To which he responds to it as, oh, well, I watch trans porn all the time with my dog. Y'all, crickets were in the office, like crickets. I literally turned over to the other staff member and looked at her. And when he left the room, she was like, well, he doesn't always think about what he says before he says it. And I went, clearly. I think that's the understatement of the year. I had to literally explain to them the difference between intersex and trans in that moment. It was not a teaching moment as much as it was an uncomfortable moment that I did not want to be in. And then when I left the office, I literally felt like everybody that views me sees me as masculine. If that was his response, is this how everybody sees me? And I live in a really small town. I mean, it destroyed me. Not only were my teeth destroyed, but the comments destroyed me in that moment. And I thought, what am I fighting for? Why am I advocating? What's the point? People are going to be hateful and they're going to say hateful things. And then it started to affect my brand at Just Juleigh. People started to reach out and say things to me that were very hateful. People started to reach out and say, but you do look masculine, but you do look like a man, but you are a joke. I'm not a joke. I know that's not true, but it affects and it bleeds over into everything. And that's why some people that cannot understand or don't have the capacity to think about this stuff and break it down and be stronger and have that confidence, that breaks them. It broke me. And then Aspen reached out and said, well, pat on the head. We'll give you a set of new dentures and send you on your way. And I thought, yeah, we're talking about the other stuff. Like, I'm glad you want to rectify the teeth issue, which I'm not thrilled with. But now we're going to talk about the other stuff that your corporation should not be saying on the back end. This is going to be a huge lesson for you in inclusion and diversity. But that made me think about other things that were being said on these other platforms. Education is right. Somebody said how people think. No way. Let's see. It says, no way you're masculine. You're hot. Oh, thank you so much. So, we talk about a lot in my platform about the differences between trans and intersex. Just to give you a little bit of knowledge, 2% of the world's population is intersex. That's 2% that knows. Okay. That's 143.5 million people currently are intersex. Now, we've talked about it before. Intersex is the global term, it is the medical terminology set forth to identify 43 recognized variations of the X chromosome on a spectrum between XX and XY. There is a spectrum. There is a bridge between male and female. And any of those variations on that bridge fall under the medical terminology of intersex. Now, just for an example, they're all going to present differently. Basically, it means you do not have enough characteristics at birth to be one gender or the other, so you're somewhere on that bridge, right? Your variation places you somewhere on that bridge. You may have characteristics that are visible of female and male. You may not have any that are visible. You may have internal characteristics that aren't visible to the general public. You may not, right? You may present more female on the inside and male on the outside. You may present more female on the outside and male on the inside. You may literally have a kaleidoscope internally. If you've never seen a kaleidoscope, pick one up and look at it. You may literally have a kaleidoscope of characteristics from both genders. It was explained recently to me as being your hybrid. You're a hybrid of both, right? You're intersex. You're in between the sexes, right? And even within that number set, so 2% of the world's global population has found out that they are intersex. 2% of that number identifies as trans. Trans is an identity. Intersex is how you're born. Gay is an identity. Intersex is how you're born. Cisgender, right? You are a straight female or a straight male. That is your identity. Still different from how you were born, which is intersex. So you can be cisgendered and trans and intersex. You can be non-binary and intersex. You can be gay and intersex. Intersex is how you're born. All of those other characteristics or all those other identities are identities, right? It does lead to a lot of hate. I've always said that hate comes from fear of not knowing. Okay? Fear of not knowing. Somebody on one of my content today, on one of the videos on TikTok today, she said, don't be so upset when people ask if you have a penis or a vagina. I said, why not? That's none of your business. And that has nothing to do with being intersex. I mean, anybody on this planet can be born with ambiguous genitalia. That is not a intersex thing. We don't own it. Anybody. 2% of the intersex population will show ambiguous genitalia on the outside of their body. 2%. That's a small number. 2% of intersex individuals identify as trans. That's a small number, right? I made a video yesterday on TikTok because a woman said, I would like to know, she said, to be blunt, all people really care about is whether you have girl parts or male parts on the outside of your body. And I said, why does that even matter? That has nothing to do with how somebody is going to be viable on this planet. It has nothing, unless you're sleeping with somebody, you don't really need to know what's in their pants. I'm going to use Maribel. I'm going to use you, Brooklyn Miss, as an example. I met Maribel years ago when I signed up to work for the circus, right? One of my good friends said, some people dream about running off with the circus. You actually did it. I did it. I was literally at a point in my life where I was like, fuck everybody. I could give two shits what anybody thinks. I need a vacation. The circus was in town. I went to go see the circus, and then I answered an ad in the paper because they were looking for a butcher. This is not a butcher like they needed somebody to cut up meat in the chef house. They had cooks for that. This was a butcher, which is a terminology for somebody that sells popcorn and candy and Cokes and all of the merchandise while at the circus. So the ones that walk up and through the stands that are like, get your glow stick, those are called butchers. And they needed one, and they gave you a place to live. You were going to have roommates. You would travel with them. You would set up the merchandise stands in each of the locations. You would unhouse all the merchandise, and then you would sell the merchandise. And they call you butchers. Now, when I met Maribel, she was the costuming queen of the circus, right? She ran their costuming department while we were on tour. And the reason I'm using her as an example is when we met each other, she did not approach me and say, oh my gosh, you seem so funny. I'd love to hang out with you. What's in your pants? She didn't ask. She didn't ask. She did not ask that. She said, oh my God, you seem so fun. I would love to hang out with you. Let's hang out. What do you do here on butchering? Well, after the circus, you come to my place. We'll have some drinks. Let's hang out and get to know each other. You're funny. I would like to know you better. She never said, what's in your pants? That was not the first question she had to ask. And I remember telling her that I was intersex. I remember we had this conversation, and not for a moment as I was telling her about my intersex journey did she say, what's in your pants? She didn't for one moment say, what's in your pants? Because if you don't tell me and I don't know the truth, I'm going to stop hanging out with you. That was never a question for her. And the reason I talk about it now is even on TikTok, people will come back and say, oh, well, you're being so mean to me. I'm just asking because I want to be educated. Let's get this straight. That is not an educated question to ask anybody because it doesn't matter. When you go to open a bank account, do you walk into the bank and say, hey, can I speak to the bank manager? Hey, I'm here to open a bank account. I've heard great things about your bank. Do you have a dick or a pussy in your pants? Because if you tell me you have something that I'm not okay with, I'm not opening a bank account here. I don't think anybody asked that question to be educated. I think they asked that question to further push marginalized individuals back into the corner. I think people ask that question because they want you to fit into a box or an agenda that they've been taught. And it is a further way for them to show hate. For the same reason that when the pronoun trend was really big 2 years ago, everybody was like, what's your pronouns? You don't believe in pronouns? And I said, I understand people wanting to know, but I also am from the old school of, if you saw me in this moment right now on YouTube, you wouldn't ask me what my pronouns are. You would assume that I'm a beautiful woman, right? You would say, hi. Or if I was in public and you ran into me, you'd be like, excuse me. You wouldn't say, excuse me, what are your pronouns? I think people in certain communities use pronouns as a way to further push a negative narrative. Because if they ask you what your pronouns are and they don't agree with the response that you give, they then can turn around and be hateful and negative towards you. So tonight we're talking about hate. We're talking about hateful comments. We're talking about the need of what people, and another way we're going into hate, and we're getting a lot of comments. I'm going to try and read them. But another way we are going into hate is because you know, I've always said this too. I love when people preface things, right? I love when people will say, I don't mean to be rude, and then they're rude. They'll do this a lot on social media too. I don't mean to offend you, and then they say stuff that's offensive. I'm old school. I'm 48 this year, right? I'm old school. I'm from the old mantra, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't fucking say anything at all. That's how I grew up. And we've lost that somewhere. Now we're in this mindset of me, and I want to know for my own personal benefit, and I want to know so I can turn around and be hateful to you. So I'm going to ask you really off the wall, obscure, hateful, random questions. We were in a live earlier tonight before I came on YouTube, and somebody came in and she said, oh my gosh, I love that lipstick shade. I love that lipstick shade on you. Are you diabetic? And I thought, this cannot be a trend, right? That would be like going into somebody's room and saying, I love your eyeshadow. Do you have cancer? I don't get it. I'm going to start showing some of your comments on the screen. Stephen said, hey, good looking. Hi, Stephen. So Stephen said that somebody approached him on TikTok and said, how much heroin do you do? First off, I don't think Stephen's doing heroin. If he was doing heroin, that's his prerogative. It's his choice. It is not your prerogative to ask. And that's a very hateful question. And we have a lot of people that are hiding behind their keyboards, and they're finding it okay to ask. Somebody else said they would never ask that. Look, I am too, even though I'm 33. He is saying he's old school too. Like, he's from the mindset of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't ask, or don't say anything at all. I don't like the stares people give yous. So Dylan is in my life. Dylan, it's good to see you. He's saying, I don't like the stares people give you. Now, to counteract that, I learned a very important lesson when I first started to transition into this intersex vessel of female. So in 2018, when we found out from the NIH, the National Institute of Health, that if I wanted to live longer and live past the age of 48, which is this year, y'all, that I needed to transition. I was out with a really good friend in Orlando, and I was really upset at how people were staring at me. And Dylan, this kind of leads to you a little bit. And my good friend said, why does it matter, Julie? You don't know why they're staring at you. They could be staring at you because you have a beautiful smile. They could be staring at you because they love your eyeshadow. They could be staring at you because the young man that you're with in a Broncos baseball hat that says J Love D on the side of it, that y'all look really cute together and you're a cute couple. They could be looking at you because you're tall. They could be looking at you because you look great in that top. They could be looking at you because they envy your breast size. He said, you have no idea why they are staring at you. Let them stare. People stare. It has no bearing on who you are. And unless they come up and say, those are cute earrings, where'd you get them? You're not going to know why they're staring at you. So I understand where you're coming from, Dylan. Other people have said that to me too. And at the end of the day, that's not my issue. That's not my problem. I don't know why they're staring at me. And unless they tell me, I'm not going to know. So I can't let that bother me on some level. But what does bother me and what does get to me are comments that people make to each other. Comments, right? Comments and rash judgments and not knowing, right? And my cocktails know from watching me on TikTok, I get a lot of hate. I get a lot of hate. I know a lot of creators that get a lot of hate. I know a lot of creators that are dealing with people saying really maligned, nasty stuff to them. And that's what we're talking about tonight is hate. That's what and where is it coming from? And I've always said that hate comes from fear. It's a fear of not knowing. They don't understand. They don't know. And they lead with that hate. But sometimes that hate is blatant hate. Going back to the woman earlier, I made a comment. So a woman said to me after hearing one of my TikToks the other day, she said, people just want to know if you have female parts or male parts on the outside. And I said, if you followed me and you actually listened to my content, you would understand that with intersex people, it could be a conglomeration of all those things and there's no way to tell. But what's actually on the outside of my body is none of your business unless you're fucking me, paying my bills, or making life decisions with me. It's none of your business, which it's not. That's none of your business. If you're going into the polls to vote for a politician on voting day, you should be worried about how they do in business. What is their track record with getting laws changed and things done? You shouldn't go into that voting booth thinking, I wonder what they have on the outside of their body. And to be really honest, if you were to go buy a car and there's a hood ornament on the hood of the car that you don't like, you would either not buy that car or you would say, I don't like it, but you wouldn't buy the, do you know what I mean? Like, and it shouldn't be about that. It should be about the performance of the vehicle. And if it's going to get you from point A to point B, and if you like the color, and if you like all the features about that vehicle, it shouldn't be about the hood ornament on the front. But if it is absolutely 100% your choice to not purchase that car or to go on to the next car. You shouldn't say hateful things about the hood ornament. Well, that is just ugly and disgusting. I don't know why that car company would put that on the front of their car that they designed and made. I think it looks horrible. You would just go buy another car. Or maybe you would have that hood ornament removed because you like the car or not. But it's just crazy to me how people justify their hate in this world. That's why people kill themselves. Steven said it. He said, when people are nasty and say hateful things to each other, that's why people kill themselves. 100%. People deal with it on some level. There's a TikTok creator currently, like the guy at the grocery store. Oh, I guess some guy at the grocery store looked at me weird. I didn't see it. I didn't notice it. But Dylan noticed it. And Dylan always likes to come to my defense. He always wants to beat people up, which I don't need you to fight my battles, but I love that he wants to. Chrissy says, you are a beautiful person. Thank you, Chrissy. And I love that all these comments are coming in and that we're having more people watch and join us because that's what Tuesday nights are about. And I want it to be interactive. I want y'all to feel like you can ask me questions in here and that we can talk about it. The other night, I was watching, it was late at night. I was not on TikTok, but I was scrolling like many people go on TikTok to do. And I came across a young girl that had cerebral palsy. And she was in Europe and she was living her best life. And she had the biggest smile on her face. She was educating people about cerebral palsy. She was educating people about what it meant for her to have it. And literally every other comment was, go kill yourself. You're lying. You don't have this. Every other comment was hateful. And my first thought was, I want to jump through the phone. I want to wrap my arms around her and I want to protect her. And at one point she was like, I'm not lying. She was like, I literally have cerebral palsy. I'm in a wheelchair. And people are like, you're lying. I know you. You were walking down the street not 3 hours ago. And I thought, What is wrong with this world that this is considered normal? Why is this normalized? Why are we not normalizing being kind to everybody? Not judging somebody before you've walked a mile in their shoes. Dylan's a great example. Sorry, Dylan, you may be mad at me for calling you out, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit because you're in my life and I feel like I can. Dylan has had a speech. He has had an issue with his speech. He has more skin underneath his tongue in his lower palate than most people are born with, and it's caused a speech issue for him for his entire life. Now, when people hear Dylan speak, they often will regard him as being mentally challenged. And it is filtered over into how people treat him at work. It is filtered over into who takes advantage of him in his lifetime. And he's defensive about it, right? When people make fun of him, he'll say, "Are you making fun of the way I talk?" He says, "That has nothing to do with my ability as a person. I'm in construction. I can do this, this, and this. But you're making a rash judgment about how I talk." And let's be honest, not everybody has the insurance, Dylan included, to go have that issue fixed. And people still treat him as if he is less than. That's so sad to me. It's so sad to me. And yet, if you are just quiet in the moment and you listen to what he's telling you and you ask questions, if he has said something that he knows you might not understand, he rephrases it. But I've gotten to watch firsthand how people react and treat him because of it. That's deplorable. It's absolutely 100% deplorable. As a person, he's got one of the nicest, kindest hearts I've ever witnessed in another human being. He made me dinner the other night, right? He was like, "Julie, I don't like the way you're eating. I don't think you're eating healthy. I'm going to make you dinner. Let's go to the grocery store." And so we went to the grocery store and he bought all of the fixings. And then he came home and he made me lemon pepper chicken and he made green bean. And I was like, "Who taught you how to be such a great cook?" And he went, "I went to culinary school." And I said, "Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you cooking somewhere?" And then I realized later on when I was thinking about it, he probably isn't cooking anywhere because of the way he's treated from his speech issue. When people are being marginalized, when they are being pushed into the dark recesses, when they are being pushed back, right? Oftentimes they do not seek out a better position for themselves in life because they feel like everybody's going to treat them that way. That's factual. I had somebody reach out to me after the Aspen Dental issue, and I shared this with Aspen Dental later. So Dylan said, "I'm in Georgia all alone. I've got Julie and her roommates, and other than that, my boss and his family, because people have treated him so poorly." Steven says, "I'll beat them with my one leg, bro." Dylan, Steven says, "You have a new buddy here in him." And Benjamin just said, "It all comes down to parents, community, and schools to educate on these matters. Teach kindness." 100%, absolutely. And here's the thing. Kindness, I say it all the time on other platforms, kindness is free. It is free. It is also a choice. One of my favorite things to do, and I say this to everybody that's listening out in podcast land as well, that's listening to us, one of my favorite challenges to do is, and this is a great challenge for tomorrow, right? Pick any day this week and make an inherent choice that everybody you come into contact with, you are going to give a compliment, a positive compliment. It literally could be just a smile. You could pass somebody on the street and say, "Oh my gosh, cool car." Or you could be in your place of business and Maria from accounting can come down and give you something that she needs to give you to your office. And you can say, "That scarf looks really great on you." Or, "How smart you look today." Or, "Gosh, I love your hair." Or, "I love that lipstick shade." Don't say, "I love that lipstick shade. Do you have diabetes?" Right? You're trying to lead with kindness in everything you do. And I guarantee you, if you do that to every person you see, your life for that day is going to be inherently better. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to walk around with a bounce in your step. You're going to see what it does to other people when you provide them a compliment. I was in the mall the other day and with Dylan, and we walked by this one guy and I said, "You have great legs." I mean, yes, it was a little flirty, but the guy went, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much." He's like, "I've really been working on my legs." It's a choice, and you're being kind, and you're not making any assumptions. You're not judging them in any moment. You're literally being kind out of the gate across the board. "You have really great hair." "Oh my gosh, those earrings are cute." "Wow, that tie really brings out the color in your shirt." "Oh my gosh, your acquisition with that merger the other day was 100% on point. I can see why this company hired you." Compliment everybody you come in contact with and see how it changes your day. Lead with positivity, lead with kindness. And when it comes to teachers, I think teachers are trying, but I think teachers are so overtaxed these days in all schools that they're doing everything they can just to get you to the next level. But sometimes that's not enough. But I agree with that statement, Ben. Dylan said, "Add me, Stephen Coleman." For all of you, Dylan's really in the search for good friends. He is trying, even in the time that I've known him, to just kind of build his community around him. And so I always say on YouTube, it's a little bit harder to follow each other, but y'all should follow each other. Just like on TikTok, y'all should follow each other. This is why we have a cocktail family on TikTok. And that's why that's important. We have seen hate grow. Another form of hate that we'll bring up is somebody came in to the live tonight before we came on YouTube and said, "Do you support Black Lives Matter?" And I said, "Yes, of course I do. I also support all lives matter because all lives do matter." I think where I get upset is she later on in the conversation said, "Oh, you're right. Ha, ha, ha. Heart, heart. All lives do matter." And I thought, if that's your narrative and that's what you truly believe, then why come in earlier and push whether I like Black Lives Matter and whether I support that? You were trying to stir the pot and be negative. And when I called you out for it, only then you were like, "Oh, all lives matter." And I thought that's part of the problem as well. Quit trying to stir up shit. Because if you truly believe that all lives matter, you wouldn't be leading with the question of Black lives. Does Black lives matter? And of course they matter. I think also when we talk about hate, look at how long it's taken for the Black Lives Matter movement to be relevant. It's taken centuries for them to get to this moment. Somebody also commented on a post saying that intersex is just one of those newfangled words and we're in a new world. And I said, oh, honey, we are not in a new world. The intersex community has existed for centuries. And in some civilizations, intersex individuals like myself were revered as gods and goddesses. You can go back and trace our genealogic history through time, and intersex individuals are mentioned in copious amounts of history and literature. Now, slowly they've been trying to erase us, much like the trans community, but we exist. I just said in another podcast about religion and intersex that I always think of some people that come in contact with intersex individuals is that Santa Claus M&M commercial that Mars Company put out, where the M&Ms, the red and the yellow one, see Santa Claus and they go, oh my God, he does exist. And then Santa Claus turns around and says, oh my God, they do exist. Just because you have not heard about us doesn't mean we don't exist. It's like ghosts. You don't have to believe in them, but you're not believing in them doesn't make them less so. Some people believe in ghosts, some people don't. That doesn't mean they don't exist. There's literally scientific knowledge about intersex individuals. In fact, one of the variations on the spectrum, somebody was like, well, you don't present like every other XXY presents. And I was like, right, because it's a spectrum. The issues I've had in my life, other XXYs may have or may not have. We're different. It's a spectrum. One of the variations on that spectrum has 150 different ways they can present. 150 for one of the variations. It's a spectrum. And where I get so upset and it becomes so convoluted for me as an advocate is never in a million years would a cisgender woman walk up to another cisgender woman and say, oh my God, we're not the same. We don't have the same likes. Our body doesn't present in the same way. I like pink. You like green. I like tall, dark, and handsome men. You like meth heads that don't have a job. Like they would never do that to each other. And yet they could because we're not copycats of each other. It is a variation. It is a spectrum. We are all different. So on some level, I get very frustrated when I'm pushing the intersex education and people go, oh, well, I know somebody that has XXY and that's not what they go through. Yes, right, Sherlock Holmes, because we're all different, you brainiac. I've never heard of intersex till I met you. And right, you wouldn't. So let's get something very clear. The word intersex is not a new term. We've already talked about it, right? Back in the day, back before Christ was even around, there was an ancient intersex goddess by the name of Cybele. Now, she did present in hermaphroditic form. She did present, this goddess, this intersex goddess did have both male and female parts on the outside of her body. She was considered an intersex goddess. And she had a sect. So basically, she had her own TikTok family of people called Cybeleans. And they were all part of the Cybele sect. These were intersex individuals, many different variations that made it past growing up and were now adults, and they were all in this Cybelean sect. And you know what they used to use them for? They locked them in towers in religious buildings around Rome. And whenever there was a party, whenever somebody had a party, they brought out the Cybelean sect. And these intersex individuals were then becoming tarot readers, sex slaves, magicians, jesters. They literally used them for entertainment purposes. That's true. It's written in our history. Somebody the other day in one of my contexts on TikTok said, intersex is just one of these stupid new words like non-binary. And I said, no, it's not. In 1940, when Klinefelter syndrome first came onto the scene, when the extra X was found present in research studies, the documentation that supported the find of that X said a study in intersexual variations. It's not a new word. And Stephen, I'm not mad at you, but I get upset at people that say, oh, it's some new word. No, it's not. Just because you've never heard it doesn't mean it's new. And if you are part of the intersex community and you advocated, or even if you didn't advocate and you were part of the intersex community, you would understand that it's not a new word. Do you want to know, quite frankly, why you're just hearing about intersex individuals? It's because they're not aborting us, which is what the directive has been for the last 80 or 90 years. They're not changing us at surgery anymore because people are coming forward and saying that's wrong. You can't pick a sex or gender for somebody, not knowing how their body is going to present later on. You can't stick us in an asylum anymore or send us up to a hospital or to a nunnery because you don't want to deal with us, because those don't really exist anymore. So you're starting to hear about it because we're coming out of the woodwork and we're saying we're viable and we're visible, and you can't treat us like trash, which leads back to the hate. You can't treat us like trash. Now, I think it's very interesting, even when we could talk for hours about all of the similarities between ancient trans and intersex history and current trans and intersex history. It's rampant. The fact that most transgender individuals go into sex work, I think, says a lot about how society views them, right? Well, I don't want to have anything to do with you, and I don't want to be your friend, but I'll fuck you. I'll walk away from my wife or my husband in our current societal marriage, which everybody praises us for being in, because I need something different. So I will look on Grindr, and I'll look on Bumble, and I'll look on all these other sites, and I'll find a trans individual and I'll sleep with you because that could be fun. Whoa, look at all the bells and whistles. But I'm not going to accept you in society, and I'm not going to honor that you exist. And I'm not going to treat you like a fellow human being because I don't know what you are. Nobody's told me, and I'm not smart enough to go pick up a book and try and figure it out on my own. I'm just going to run with the rest of society and whatever they believe I'm going to believe. I mean, God gave me a brain, and it's a choice to be kind, and it's a choice to educate myself, and it's a choice to become smarter, and it's a choice to not stop growing and to learn and learn and learn. But I don't want to do that. But I'll fuck you. I'll step away from my marriage and I'll come out and we can have sex together, because that could be fun. Same thing with intersex women. I don't want to marry you, because then I'd have to explain to my whole family what you are, and I don't want to have to do that because I'm not really sure what that is either. But I'll sleep with you. I'm not mad. Bless my heart, I came from Kentucky. But that's all levels of that, right? It's all levels of that. And the hate. Sometimes the hate comes from hate and fear. I wish people on some level would start to say, I was checking the time. I wish on some level people would just be honest in their ask, right? I wish people would start saying, I absolutely mean to offend you. Here's my question. I absolutely mean to be rude. Here's my question. I think you are this, right? Because then on some level, that would allow me to quickly, and even though I have no problem doing this on my own, but others might, that would allow people to quickly assess who you are as a person and decide that they don't want you in their life. I don't need your negativity. I don't need your hate. That's not who I want to surround myself with. I don't need your narcissism. I don't need your toxicity. I wish people would come right out of the gate and say, we talk about that too, right? We talk about in live, so many people, we talk about so many people. I'll educate myself now, Stephen Coleman said. We talk about so many people that will come into my lives on TikTok and they'll say, oh my God, it's Caitlin. Or, oh my God, you look like Pete Rose. Or, oh my God, you look like Shrek, Yoda. Oh my God, you should quit coming on live. You look like Miss Piggy. You look like this person. You look, and they're naming all these names, right? And a lot of my cocktails, and especially people that are listening to me again out in podcast land, some of you may have not heard me say this before, but I always tell those haters and trolls that come into those lives, I'm like, it would be far better suited for you if you came in and said, hi, my name is Alyssa, and you remind me of myself. I think you're ugly and hateful, and I can't believe you're showing up on my For You page, and I wish that you would just fall off the face of the earth. Because then if you came in and said, you look like me and my name's Alyssa, we would all understand in that room that you were trying to say that I'm ugly and that I'm hateful. Instead, they come in and they say, oh my God, you look like Miss Piggy. And I go, I'm not mad at that. I'm going to run to the bank with, it's like, and people say, well, I don't mean anything by it, but you look like Janice Dickinson. I know for the longest time, Janice Dickinson has not gotten a lot of love in television and social media. We know what people say about her. Now, she was the first supermodel. She absolutely was stunning and gorgeous. You could be saying I look like her, right? Odds are you're not when you come in and you say those things. But here's my takeaway. Everybody you've mentioned is iconic. Everybody you mentioned to me, Yoda, Shrek, Pete Rose, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, Brett Favre, everybody that you say I look like is iconic. I'm going to run to the bank with that. You're calling me iconic. You're calling me beautiful. You're calling, and we know they're iconic because you know who they are. I'm not going to be mad that you compare me to Shrek. I know I don't look like Shrek. Shrek's also iconic. Shrek was also one of the highest grossing films ever in the box office when it comes to animation. Not going to be mad at that. But I would prefer you come in and say, my name's Bob, and I am hateful, and I spray paint people's cars, and I peel the paint off of their car by pouring lemon juice all over it, and I spit at people in public. You look just like me. Well, then everybody in the room would know you're trying to say I'm nasty and ugly. But if you come in my room and you say I look like an icon, that's not going to bother me in the least because you know who they are and they are iconic. And whether you like them or not, and whether you're just trying to throw shade at me, that's never going to make me mad. They're iconic. But on that level, I wish people would come in and say, I wish they would come in and say, my name is Mark, and I am a hateful person, and I wish everybody on this earth would just disintegrate. And then say, oh my gosh, you look just like me in the mirror. Well, then we'd know that you're trying to say I'm ugly and nasty. I don't want those kind of people in my life. I don't want those kind of people surrounding me. I don't want those kind of people anywhere. Just my thought on the matter. Just my thought. She coined the phrase supermodel. Yes, Janice Dickinson did. I love watching your videos. I could watch you 24/7. Thank you, Stephen. I love your attitude. Thank you. Here is Maribel again, throwing me kisses. So whenever I say something that Dylan kind of laughs about or thinks is funny, he'll go, "Oh, really?" So I think it's funny because I just saw his "oh, really" comment. He was like, "Oh, really?" I think he was talking about individuals that don't want to marry me and just want to have sex with me. And he said, "Oh, really?" Janice Dickinson is a legend. She is a legend, but that's my point. People come in these lives and they say, "You look like Janice Dickinson." And I'm like, she's a legend. Somebody the other day came in and they said, "You look like an old version of Jessica Lange." Well, one, they didn't need to say old. I've heard Jessica Lange before. They didn't need to say old. I thought that was kind of rude. What I laughed about was they weren't following me. They clearly came in the room to throw insight. But my response was, she's a legend. You want me to be the supreme being? Ryan Murphy literally asked her to come be a part of American Horror Story, liked her so much, realized the capacity of what she brought to the project as an actress, and made sure she was a part of every season for like 14 seasons. She's a god in my book. You want to compare me to her? Great. She's an icon. I'm not mad at it at all. You throwing old into the comment was your way of trying to make me feel less than. She's an icon. And I'm 48. Now, do I feel old? I feel really old when I'm having to defend myself on social media all the time. One woman came in today and she said, "You're on social media." She was like, "You shouldn't put stuff out there if you don't expect people to make rude comments." I literally had to pause for a moment and then I went, "Ma'am, that is not what social media is for." People don't create content so you can come back and put them down and give them rude comments. You've missed the whole, what do they say now? What's that thing they say? You missed the assignment, right? Which I think is funny. They'll be like, she did not do the assignment. She missed the assignment. I thought that is not what social media is for at all. But the fact that she believes at this point in time in her life while watching social media that it's normalized to throw insults and be nasty, that's what's wrong with the world. That's what's wrong with the world. And on some level, I sat back and I just thought, that's sad. That's sad that her takeaway is, I come on here to educate people about being intersex and what it's like to live in an intersex life and just be kind to people. I mean, sometimes I'm not even talking about intersex stuff. Sometimes we're talking about eating cold ravioli out of a Chef Boyardee can because it's pre-cooked before they put it in the can and it tastes better cold than it does when you heat it up. But if you feel that that is an invite to be a nasty person, then you've missed the whole assignment on what it means to have access to social media and some of the wonderful creators out there that are changing the world. Maribel said she wants to look old like Jessica Lange. Shit. Right? Steven said, "Oh my God, my favorite show," talking about American Horror Story. It is a great show. You don't look old. Thank you. Dylan says you feel old when you're with me. Not so much, Dylan. I mean, you're 30. I'm 48. Right. So Benjamin Ramos said, oh, I get it. So if I introduce myself to people, they can be rude to me. I mean, basically, if you're thinking about her logic in that moment, that's exactly what she was saying. Now, I did do, if you're not watching me on TikTok, you can go find me. Now, look, I try to respond to every comment with dignity and grace. That's one of the reasons that my cocktails seek me out and follow me. And that's a comment that I get a lot, that you take the high road. And when you respond to some of these people, you shouldn't have to. First, they say you shouldn't respond to them. Second, they say you do it with dignity and grace. The reason I respond to them is if it's a comment that does not serve my community or a marginalized community that I am representing, it is absolutely 100% my duty in trying to make the world a better place than how I found it, to respond to them and at least try and educate them. Recently, I told somebody in my family, I said, it's really hard bringing people to the fountain to drink. And the family member said, especially when you want to hold them under and watch them drown. And I laughed about it and I thought, sometimes you do. Sometimes I literally go, oh. But perceptions are never going to change. Society is not going to change as a populace if we don't tell our stories and we don't educate. So to the people that always say to me, you don't have to tell people your story, I 100% absolutely have to tell my story. And you should tell your story too, because that's the only way we're going to foster change. It's the only way. Can you imagine for a second if the African American community did not fight for the right to be seen during the Black Lives Matter movement? Let's even take it back further. Can you imagine how we would treat them as human beings if Martin Luther King had not done the March on Selma? Go all the way back. Go all the way back to the 1800s. We'd still be treating people that way. Telling your story is 100% important, because things won't ever change if you don't. And if you don't educate about who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to do, change won't happen. It won't happen. Recently, there was a lot of content surrounding a trans woman that was speaking before the House of Representatives in Arizona. And an Arizona congressman said, do you have a dick? In that moment, he made it normal to ask. He tried to negate her fight and her argument and what she was talking about by asking if she had a penis. She's a doctor. She literally was there to talk about affirming surgeries for the trans community. And he wasn't winning the fight. He wasn't winning the argument. So he said, do you have a penis? On the floor. The fact that we are even at that point in the game, I hope that he doesn't get reelected. I hope that karma is swift for him. I hope that he sees the errors of his ways. I always say I would never wish any of the things that people go through that is challenging on somebody else. But on some level, you hope that one of his children comes to him and says, I'm trans. the hate is literally bubbling out of the cauldron and starting to affect everything. Dylan, don't ask that question in this live. Mirabelle, did you not hear about that? You didn't hear about that. I made a TikTok video about it. Cat Mom, I think her name's Cat Mom in Omaha. She made a video about it recently. And even just the comments from people that don't understand it. And even the comments from people that are trying to fit it into this box. And I'm sitting here going, it's not important. It's literally not important unless you're having an intimate relationship with that individual. That's not what makes us human. Our life spirit makes us human. Our heart and the way we treat people makes people human. What's between your legs? And in that one moment, because he was losing the battle, he hit literally below the belt. Shame on you. And it elicited a room of boos. People literally were like, boo, why would you say that? He couldn't give her, as a medical doctor, the permission to win this argument. So he hit below the belt. He threw something out that he wanted to know and he thought was hateful enough that it would shut her up. And I often don't talk about politics. I don't do it. How I vote changes. I myself consider myself more middle of the road, but there are people in my life that are very one way and very the other way, and they get upset when you're anything different, right? And that's people in general. But let's be really clear about something. Some of the hardest pushing religious and political figures in the world are the ones that are being hateful to our face, but slipping into our DMs at night. I'll say it. I will absolutely say it because I am known for saying what's truthful and what's on my mind, and I'm saying what everybody else is thinking. You know, a lot of drag queens recently have been coming forward and saying, never once have you seen a drag queen arrested for pedophilia. But you have seen politics and preachers and pastors and counselors and people that are supposed to be making a positive impact on the world. You've seen all of them arrested for pedophilia. Never once a drag queen. I mean, sure, I guess on some level it could be possible. We did have a clown that would go and kidnap young boys and kill them. Thank you, John Wayne Gacy. But we've also had women that do that. Eileen Wuornos, but that hate, that level of hate is so extreme and so wide, right? Let's just throw this wide bomb out there and just capture everybody in it. And you're like, what? Mirabelle said she's not refined. Dylan said, don't worry about what's between her legs. I would have said, ask your daddy. I have done that before. And then you get the people that are like, that's so original. And I'm like, look, on some level, some people will never know the hate that I see. That's just honest. As an advocate for my community, I've seen death threats. People have threatened to ruin my brand. My mother said something recently to me, and she said, remember, when you're at the top of your game and you're speaking the truth, that's when people want to shut you down and shut you up. That's a very fair statement. That doctor in Arizona, she was speaking the truth, and they tried to shut her up. Even through history, we can even go as far as conspiracy theories and talk about the people that have been executed or murdered to shut up. Because the truth may get out, right? Something may come out that we don't want the world to know. Facts. Look, you can even look at stuff like Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, who are finally telling the story about the institution. And there are people for years that have tried to keep that under lock and key. You can't talk about the institution. Now those secrets are starting to come out. So of course people are trying to lambaste and undercut Meghan Markle, right? You even have people that are like, well, she's not a part of the institution. She wasn't born of that. So we'll go after her, and she's Black. So we'll make her look like she's bad and she's in the wrong. Because Harry, he was born into that. So he has no idea that it's kind of that divide and conquer mentality. I often always will say hate's not going to flourish in a world where there's good, and vice versa. That's a theme that we've carried throughout our lifetime. We've seen it in everything from film, television, songs, written word. You can't have good without evil. You can't have Christ without Satan. You can't have bad without good. Like, we get it. And maybe you can't. But I do think that love can win. And I do think that kindness can win. I do think that the good can overpower the bad. Maybe we won't get rid of it completely, but I do think that all of the good can overshadow all of the bad. I think it's plausible and possible. "10 stars to your mom," Ben Ramos says. Look, my mom is brilliant. So is my dad. But my mom, my mom has not had an easy life. And what do I say all the time? My cocktails know. I don't think anybody gets to lead this planet without going through something chaotic and cataclysmic. I don't think, and some of us go through multiple things that are chaotic and cataclysmic. And for us individually, that's a part of our journey. That's a part of my journey. Everything I've gone through is a part of my journey. And when I'm done with that journey and I meet my maker, whatever you believe in podcast land or YouTube land or TikTok land, whoever you believe is out there, if you feel like the universe created you, fine. If you believe in God, fine. Whatever you believe in, when you meet the person or entity that made you, you will be able to look back on your journey and you will say, okay, maybe I can do this better next time if I have the opportunity to go back. Here's the thing. Do any of us know what's on the other side? No. Why do we not know this? Because nobody's gone and come back and said for a factual fact. Sure, people have said they've died and they've come back and written books on it, but nobody has literally gone, met their maker, come back and done all these television shows about it and said, I did it. And people have tried, but nobody's done that. And it's going to be different for everybody. But my mom's right on that level. When people are trying to say the truth or they're trying to tell their truth, others will try and silence them. That's true. Jennifer has been listening this whole time, and we haven't really seen a comment from her. And she wrote, I raised my children to be respectful and under no uncertain term be hateful. 100%. Dylan said, you get a lot of hate. I've seen it, but you got to persevere. Haters will hate because they ain't you. I persevere. I appreciate that, Dylan. I persevere because somebody asked me the other day. They said, what? They said, your confidence is amazing. And I would love some of that confidence. What keeps you going? And I said, as cliche as this is going to sound, a hope for a better tomorrow. That's what keeps me going. Hashtag facts. My life has not been easy. Hashtag facts. I am no better than anybody else on this planet when it comes to duress or stress. We all go through things. My story is no more important than your story. But I choose to tell it. And I choose to tell my story because things won't ever get better for anybody if we're silent. If we don't stand up and talk about what ails us, what bothers us, ways we think that we can become better as a society and as a populace. If we don't talk about it, it doesn't change. If doctors out there aren't trying to figure out a new way to treat something versus an old way, then they're going to keep treating it the old way and nothing's going to change. And that's why I tell it. And that's why I encourage everybody else to tell it, their own story. My life is great because it's a life. And I get to live it. And as hard as my life has been, it's been very rewarding at the same time. And I've had to jump over a lot of hurdles, and I'm still hopping over hurdles, and I am not perfect. And neither of you are perfect. None of you are perfect. None of us are perfect. And we all struggle, and we all try and figure out who we need to pay this month so that we can buy food for our family, or that we can get milk, or that we can replace the muffler on our car, or that we can get a new car, or that we can maybe move into a better apartment. We all struggle. But that's what community is for. Community is telling your stories and supporting each other so that the struggle becomes a little less of a struggle. I think it's funny because I was raised Christian, and one of the common threads throughout Christianity is God wants you to love and he wants you to be loved. He wants you to love and he wants you to be loved. However you want to break that down. Now, he also created sex, right? He created the pleasure of sex. He wants you to have pleasure. He didn't say at any point in his teachings in that Bible, walk up to somebody and ask if they have a penis or a vagina so that you can be pleasured better. He said, I want you to love your fellow man or woman. I want you to love them. I want you to get to know them and love them. Somebody asked me recently, after I'd made the TikTok today about it's none of your business what's in my pants, somebody said, well, I'm just trying to be educated. How do y'all have sex? And I said, well, the same way you have sex. We go to a bar or to the grocery store. We see somebody we're attracted to. We approach them. It could be a woman. It could be a man. Fuck, it could be a tree out in the backyard. We then approach it and we say, I'm attracted to you. And we wait for their response. A tree may not respond, but the person or female or male may say, oh, I'm really digging you too. And then guess what? We get together. We find out what's pleasurable. We do that to each other. We might have a cigarette or smoke some weed in the interim. Then we figure out if we'd like to do it again, and we do it again. Then we may do it, like Alex last night, 5 times. Or we may do it like I did a couple of weeks ago, 4 times in 7 hours. Regardless, we keep doing it until we're not finding pleasure in it anymore. And at that point, we either break away and go find somebody else, or we stay with that person and marry them. I have sex the same way that you have sex. An intersex individual has sex the same way that any other human or species has sex. And at the end of the day, it's none of your fucking business if you're not the person I'm fucking. See how that works? And then when I have that response to your stupid question, you can't come back and say, well, that was rude. I was just trying to be educated. Then you should have paid more attention in sexual education in school. I would love to sit down with a glass of wine while reading your book. My book's not out yet. And Maribel said that would be cool. Maribel's like, wait till you get to the chapter titled Circus, because it was a circus. And honestly, the circus, I had a lot of heartbreak in the circus. Jake. That's all we're going to say. That's all we're going to say. If you know, you know, Jake. Good night, babe. I love you. Call you when you get off. Okay, bye, Dylan. Is that so? Mirabella's laughing. And then she said, fuck yeah. Gosh, Maribel and I could just write a book. We could co-write a book about the circus and all the shit that went down. I mean, you people think working at a circus is easy. This isn't water for elephants. Like, Maribel and I could totally write a story about our time at the circus, and people's mouths would drop. We could talk about antics between artists. We could talk about Dory, and we're not talking about a little fish with blue and yellow stripes. We could talk about, we could talk about so much shit. We might have to change the names to protect the not so innocent, but she and I could write literally a story that would make American Horror Story look like Muppet Babies. Yeah, he came in 2 packs. The other one's a heartbreaker too. Anyway, guys, it has been great. This has been a great night tonight. We had a lot of people earlier. We still have some of those people in here now. We talked about hate tonight. Next week, I will probably be throwing out some other thoughts, really, if you want to. Now, if you want to ask a question of me, feel free to go to justjuleigh.com. There is a tab set up for Juleigh Answers, and you can ask any question in there. The running joke has been, you can ask me how to get blood out of your sheets. I would just say, don't kill your significant other in the bedroom, or put hydrogen peroxide in your wash. But you can ask me anything from questions that you have on your mind, advice, relationship advice, anything really that you want to ask on. But you would go to justjuleigh.com, click on that Juleigh Answers tab, fill out that questionnaire, and we will be able to answer those questions in a new video. Also, we have touched on hate this evening. So we've talked about Aspen Dental and kind of what happened there. For those that don't know the story or journey about my recent dental woes, you can go back and listen to the beginning of this podcast or vlogcast to see those comments and talk about that. We've talked about just hate in general across so many platforms, between trolls and people that are uneducated. We've talked about where I would like to see things move in the future, but we've had a great conversation this evening on justjuleigh.com. This will continue to be up for the duration of the internet, and feel free to come back next Tuesday when we have more thoughts to discuss. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. Be blessed. And I love all of you, my little cocktails, out in podcast land and on TikTok and all of my platforms. Have a wonderful week.
For more content, follow justjuleigh.com. That's just Juleigh, JULEIGH.com. Thank you to our guests, and thank you for joining us this evening. Join us next week as Juleigh tries a different rosé.
Bye.